Hello, welcome to the Mad Batter channel. My name's Chris. I've now been playing with Luminar Neo for a few weeks, and I thought I'd give you some initial thoughts on where we are and where I hope we might get to. The first thing, of course, is to acknowledge that Skylum are based in Ukraine and the dreadful things that are happening over there. I understand most of the staff are in Kiev, and thankfully they're safe, which of course makes them better off than many hundreds of thousands or even millions of their fellow citizens. And it is remarkable they've continued to produce updates, i.e. 1.0, 2, 4 and 5, whilst under this duress. However, we must bear in mind that Neo was actually issued as a first 1.0.0 version before the Russian invasion, and it was clearly not really ready for issue, missing various basic elements as well as some of the much trumpeted things like mask AI, portrait background removal, etc. For instance, there's no histogram or clipping warnings. The only mask function is the paint mask, and you can't copy or paste masks. For heaven's sake, there's not even a basic undo or redo, or not in Windows, the Windows version anyway. They're in the menus, but they don't work. And the layer function is not fully formed. I have to say this is really quite poor, and it's not the first time it's happened with a Skylum product. By the way, on the question of the histogram, there was a workaround in that the histogram appeared underneath the curves tool, and when you edited the picture, that pseudo histogram updated. I can't remember if it was on the original version of Windows Luminar Neo, but certainly there is no pseudo histogram now. Maybe it's only on the Mac version. More generally, no one expected Luminar Neo to have Photoshop-like abilities. Photoshop, of course, can do everything, and quite often do it in several different ways, but it can be quite difficult and has a steep learning curve. But if Neo is being pushed to be used for composites as well as photo editing, I must say that while it may be good at changing pixels, i.e. editing photos, it can't create pixels, e.g. there's no brush tool, type tool, pencil tool, etc. These are essential elements of compositing, and it also needs to be able to accept plugins. Now to the positives, which will no doubt increase as more updates are issued, especially major updates with the promised new features. Although it has to be pointed out that by the time all this comes out, they will have had our money for purchasing the program for 6 months or more. As with Luminar 4 and AI, the program has a lot of functions that enable easy editing, and they work well. Accent AI is the most obvious. The new relight tool makes it easier to sculpt light in a photo. And of course the dust spot and power lines removal, whilst not perfect, are very useful functions which will give people a lot of time savings in the future. The other major gain from Neo is the ability to use any tool as often as you want. Combined with masking, that has a similar effect to a proper layer function, although without blending modes, or indeed similar to adjustment layers in Photoshop. My favourite editing function in Luminar Neo, as it was in AI, is Supercontrast, which not only gives you full and easy control of contrast, but I like to use it to give a photo what I call body, although some of you may call it a slightly pseudo HDR look. Let me show you what I mean. Here is a photograph taken in Madeira where I have done all the basic editing and removed a lot of bits of rubbish in the foreground. Here is the original photo, which you can see was very dark. Here you can see the edits I have done in the photo, starting with raw develop to brighten it up and increase the contrast, followed by accent AI and sky enhancer just to give a general improvement to the photo, a touch of structure to sharpen it up, a bit of mystical, and finally erase, which if I turn it off you can see all the rubbish in the foreground. I'm now going to use Supercontrast to get the photo having what I call some body. I start by increasing each of the contrast sliders to around 50. As you can see, if I turn it off, that does have some small effect on the photo. I then play with each balance slider to get the effect I want. With these sliders, it's easy if you remember the letter L, meaning that if you go left with a balance slider, you will lighten the relevant part of the image. Obviously, if you decide to go positive or to the right with the balance slider, you will darken the relevant part of the image. So with this image, with the highlights, I'm going to take the balance to about plus 25, a slight darkening of the midtones, plus 17, but then the shadows I'm going to lighten up quite a lot by going to about minus 40. So then and look at the before, it's a sort of harsher picture. That to me is a more pleasant picture which has much more colour body to it. You can of course now play with the contrast sliders to see if you want to increase or decrease the effect, but I find leaving it at around the 50 mark generally does the job. So that's my initial review of Luminar Neo, and I will post some more specific videos in due course. If there's anything you want me to cover in particular, please do let me know. If you found this helpful, I'd appreciate it if you could subscribe and hit the like button. But in the meantime, many thanks for watching.